It was much smaller to begin with. It was, I think, back then, we're talking about mainly in the 60s, it was definitely different. I mean, the people didn't commute. I think probably now about 85% of the people commute out of town to work. And back then, there was a lot of lumber industry here in Cloverdale. There were probably about 10 to 12 lumber mills, sawmills. And people worked in town. They didn't commute that much going out of town to work. So that was a big difference. And in fact, a lot of kids like yourselves probably worked in the mills once they became of age to do that. And I did that. And I told myself after one summer, I said, I'm going to college. I wasn't going to be stuck in a mill to work. Now, no offense to anybody that has relatives that work there, but it is hard work. And if you were to look at the people that worked in the mill, either on the green chain or planer chain or anything like that, and they always had some fingers missing. Okay. And so, it was one summer of doing that, convinced me that, hey, I'm going to college. Okay. But it was a fun time growing up here. And, again, it was smaller, basically, we did a lot of down the river swimming and in the river and that kind of thing. Family had a ranch. So, yeah, when it became harvest season with prunes, more prunes than grapes, believe it or not, back then. Then there's a lot of time spent in the orchards and picking prunes and a little picking grapes and that sort of thing. But it was a fun time. It was we pretty much when you start in a small community going to school with other kids, and some people think that's a pro and a con. Growing up, and these people for a long, long time, but I found it to be a plus here growing up in Cloverdale. Well, during the Cold War, when we were going to school during that time, we had probably, that was the start. If I can go back, remember that many years ago, we had drills, okay, and probably much like you guys have drills, earthquake drills, and that sort of thing. I mean, we had those also, but it was always, the Cold War is always hanging over your head that, what's Russia going to bomb us? I mean, how much has that changed today, right? We're still being threatened by different nations, but and of course we're doing our own threatening too. But anyway, so growing up in the Cold War, we always kind of had this sense of, and it was obviously Russia back then, Soviet Union back then, okay. That they were going to always had a concern about another country, like, and then I can remember way back when the first Soviets were sending astronauts into space. That was always a big competition, and we're going way back in the early '60s, and late 50s, actually 59, I think it was the first one that we sent up. But anyway, there was always seemed to be in the back. People always kind of reminded you of, kind of this threat that that the two nations had, you know, Soviet Union and United States. So that was, yeah, it was kind of difficult, you know, to kind of understand. But, you know, in your history books and things like that, you always read about that. I love teaching. Yeah, I loved it. In fact, any chance when I started going to administration, any chance I could get back in the classroom for a day, I loved it. You know, it was a nice break, and just to interact with kids more. And that's one thing I miss about administration. I tried to stay connected as much as possible. I think you really have to work at it. When you're in school administration, you really have to work at it to make sure that you don't isolate yourselves from why you're here. And the reason why you're here is because of you. And so that's important. That I really enjoyed teaching. And in fact, I can remember when I made the decision to go into administration, I sat down one day and I said, why am I doing this? And but everything worked out for the most part.
Hi, I'm Miguel Gonzalez.
I'm Ashton Peterson.
And I'm Nady Calvillo.
I'm Peyton Card.
And I'm Monahi Reese.